Welcome to 3D Game User Interface Design in Godot 4 with C#. In this lecture, we're doing a project preview showing you what game features you will build in this course. We're going to provide for you the starter template project, which actually comes from a game that we built in another course. And we're going to begin by adding a start screen to this game, including 2D labels, buttons, color, and font. Then we're going to improve the 3D labels in our game. We're going to improve visibility of 3D labels, highlight the different labels programmatically, grow and shrink and change color of labels dynamically as well with C#. We're also going to display visual feedback with two-dimensional labels, like displaying correct or incorrect. And this is based on what the user answers, and of course checking their answer. We're also going to build an on-screen effect with a color overlay that appears dynamically based on if the player answered correctly or incorrectly. Of course, these elements will all be responsive for different screen sizes. We'll finish up with an end screen where we are going to build out a user interface here to allow the player to see their score or timer and then to replay. You'll see how we can polish the user interface and experience of a game to improve the quality of any game. You can apply these 2D and 3D user interface techniques and user experience techniques across all varieties of games. Let's get started. Coming up next. In this lecture, we are going to take a look at improving the user interface of a Godot game. For example, first thing we want to consider is building out a start screen. So we will look at two-dimensional and three-dimensional user interface design in this course. Right now, when we launch our game, the game begins right away. But typically, you want to have a start screen for user experience so that the user can read instructions and then start the game when they are ready. So let's build out our start screen, and this can be a new scene. In my file system, I have several files here. What I can do is right-click on my folder and create a new scene. And we can use the user interface type because we're building out a start screen. Then we can build out the name, so we can say start screen, and press OK. This creates this empty scene, and it also appears in your file system. So we have this start screen, which is a control item of type canvas and just a node in general. And when we play the game by default, we will still have our main scene selected, which in my case is level 3. But you can right-click on your start screen and set it as the main scene. That means it will run first. So we have this empty game or empty scene because our start screen is empty. Here in the start screen, we can right-click and add child nodes, and we can add canvas items like containers or labels. I'm going to choose a label, and we can press F to center on the label, and then we can use these zoom tools to zoom in on the label, and the scroll bars to navigate around. By default, the label is anchored in the top left. I can add some text in the inspector, such as my roller trivia. So 3D roller trivia, whatever you want the name to be. Then we can press play and we see that label appears in the top left-hand corner. So this refers to your game name. You want to introduce the name of your game at the top of your start screen. And here we can add new label settings and then click to expand the label settings. And we can increase our font size, for example, to 100. That's going to make the text a lot easier to read. So we see that text with the name of my game, 3D Roller Trivia. I want to center horizontally this name. So I can go on the label, and what I can do is take a look at the layout here, and we see different properties of our layout control. We also have alignment, which we can use. So that is in the label category. By default, we have horizontal alignment left, but I can use center, and that's going to center the text, but only within its own size, not on the entire object or the entire screen. In the inspector, search for layout mode. By default, we have layout mode position, but I can change this to use anchors instead. So that is under the layout category. And here we see this layout category under the control section. And we have here layout mode, which we can set to anchors. This opens the anchors options. We have top left as the default. But there are other options like full rect, custom, center, top wide. So let's choose center top. That's going to center the object on the screen horizontally. Look at that. We see we have equal margin on the left and right hand side. Perfect. Now we can also add some padding to the top of the label just by dragging it down. And we can replay, and we see, there we go, we have a bit of margin at the top of the text as well. And if you increase the size of your screen, you see the text remains in the same spot. So we can move that text to a position that looks good on a smaller screen, horizontal layout, as well as a portrait mode. So we do have to consider this portrait mode, because let's say my game is being played in this portrait option instead of landscape. Well, I have to make sure the text is still readable. So we can take a look at anchors, and we can use top wide. This will fill the entire area of that top of the screen. But you'll notice that we still have here the text being cut off if I have some portrait mode. So I'm going to use center instead. And instead I'm going to use my text wrapping. So we can look for the wrap property, which is of the label category. Auto wrap by default is off, but what we can do is we can turn on auto wrap, for example, to Word. And we can take a look at the game in different sizes. So by default, the wrapping is still going to clip the text if you have a smaller screen. The wrapping only works in terms of the object itself, not the screen size. So the wrapping does not pay attention to the screen size. Here, one option is I can increase my size of my name, and I can replay. And so we see that even though I have this larger size where I should be able to fit the text and wrap it, it's still not going to give me any wrapping. So let me just undo the size change in that case. All right, so we have horizontal centering, vertical alignment, auto wrapping, as well as justification, clipping text. Here, if true, the label only shows the text that fits inside its bounding rectangle and will clip text horizontally. If you turn on clip text, then you'll notice, it kind of have the same effect as we did before. So that doesn't solve our auto wrapping problem. In your project settings, we're going to search for display, where we have window as one of the display options. And here we have things like the width, the height, the mode, initial position type, resizable, etc. Now I want to enable stretch. So by default, the mode is disabled, but I want to change stretch mode to viewport. We'll keep the aspect, the scale, and the scale mode. Then we can replay our scene. And look at this. Now, as I increase the size of my viewport, the text actually resizes along with it. And the whole game screen actually resizes along with it. So let's say someone is playing in portrait mode. Then you'll notice that it's going to automatically get resized, so it stays in that landscape mode. Concerning our text, we can see that the text gets larger as my screen size gets larger. So if I have a really small screen size, the text is smaller, whereas if I have a larger screen size, the text becomes larger. So that is how we can enable the resizing of our label text with the screen size. Now, we notice that when we resize the screen to portrait mode, we see that with our new setting, the game is forced to landscape, even if I might want portrait in certain sizes. To address this, we can go back to our project settings, search for window. In the stretch category, we change the aspect. By default, the aspect is keep, but we can change it to expand. And this is now going to expand into the size of the width and the height that are available for any given screen size. So now we're able to see the landscape mode and then as well the portrait mode, and we see that the text resizes here based on our width and our height of the screen. So that's how we can ensure that we can still play in portrait mode while keeping that stretch of the text.